Yeah, we're ready.
Okay, so when I first started looking at this, I found this mastery button, and I'll show it to you guys. And I really thought, you know, me being a new teacher, that that's really all I care about, is them understanding. I want to know what you know and what you don't know. I can give you a test, but a test, you don't always pick it apart and assess it and everything like this. But this is such a quick overview that takes care of itself, that it's a really, after you enter the grades, you can go back through and say, oh, Billy or Susie or Johnny, or they don't get this, and how do I help them through at any point in your teachings. And so if you go to grades, and you got your normal grades right here, and then you have this learning mastery. So what this learning mastery does is it lets me see how each one of these students are doing in each one of these outcomes. Because the top of this right here is my outcome, right here. And my outcome is anything that most of mine are I just pulled them right off the state website because they are great outcomes. And so I just put them in there, and so my students can see this. So what happens is, this first assignment, you can see that some of them are a little bit low in these subjects. And so what I did is new class, I really wanted to see the dynamics of the group. So I let them pick their own partners, and then so I could see, okay, you're doing good, you're doing bad, you're doing good. And then once I plug this in, and then the next time I picked their partners, so I could pair somebody who was doing really good to somebody who was doing really bad. And so they're starting to teach each other. You get kind of a, yeah, I like that, yeah, I don't like that, because nobody wants to play with Billy or Susie or whatever, you know. But you get this great dynamics and a good overview of how everybody's doing, and you can turn certain ones of these off too. Like if I just want to concentrate on near mastery, I got just a glimpse of who's doing that. Or if I just want to concentrate on who's well mastery, then you can do that as well. And this is really what I care about, because to me a test, if you guys have all heard this, C's get degrees, if you actually knew what they don't know, it would probably shock you. You know, I'm unleashing that on society essentially. You know what I mean? If they don't know this, and this is really the fundamentals of what I'm trying to teach without doing something like this. And there's other things that you can do, but this really, it takes care of itself. And then it spits you out a report every semester that you can pit these students against these students and say, oh, I'm doing better, or they're doing better, or whatever. So any questions about this learning on what this part of it looks like?
So you set up your levels there.
Yeah, so I
Other
set this up. I
CDs.
say what this standard looks like and everything like that. And how you do that is you come over here to outcomes. And these are the outcomes, and it's as easy as this. So if you have a digital copy of your outcomes, you know, obviously this is not my outcome right here. This is just how to set it up. You just go to outcomes, type in great outcome. And then a friendly name if you want to do it, and then you can just paste, and it's done. Or you can type everything in if you don't have a digital copy. And then you can come down in here, and this is where I really made it more of a trade orientation. So if I look at this in mine, I come right here and I put journeyman. And let me get rid of all that. Okay, and then I've kept a 5-point system because I tried a 3 and it didn't give me a good curve in anything, and I felt 5 was really a better model. So I put this one right here as near journeyman, and and then 3, apprentice, and then 2, near, and so that's 2, and then for this last one, helper. And that's more of a trade-based, because I teach welding. And so I came in here, and then you have a couple of different options to what this really looks like and how it reports to mastery. I really, really like this decaying average because it takes, and what it does is every time it reports, it can come down. Because at the beginning of your class, you should be here. At the end of your class, you should be here, right? So what it does is it takes, I've set mine at every time I click this button, 20% of that goes to the total grade of mastery. You can set it up at different things. So, and I set mastery at 4. I've talked to the guy I teach with, and we had this discussion. He goes, "How can you get better than mastery?" You know, and you know, really you can't, because once you master something, you're there. But I wanted some room for growth, right? I wanted to say 4 was you're doing good, but there's always that little extra to give people a push. I read this thing one time where Michael Phelps wasn't a great swimmer, but his sisters were knocking it out of the ballpark in the junior high school range. Well, they were always told, "You're great, you've arrived, good job, high five." Well, where's his sisters now? They've arrived, right? In their mind, that's as good as you could get. But Michael never, he always continued to push himself to get better and better and better. So that's what I wanted for my students. I wanted them to see that, hey, you're good, but here's better. Does that make sense? So I wanted that for them. And so I chose 4. And in this decaying average, you can put this at what you want. So decaying average, I put mine at 20% of every time I push that button, that's how much that grade is worth. So one day they're on top of the world, the next day they're not on top of the world. So it's really a flowing document as far as where they're at as far as mastery. You can also pick n number of times, and you can choose n number of times, but I don't like that because, like I said, a course starts here and it ends up here. So they could hit mastery. If you say mastery to me is 3 times, they could hit it 3 times in the very first 3 assignments, and you never know where they're at up here at the very end. Does that make sense? And so that's n number of times. Most recent score, I really wanted a trend of what they've been doing. I didn't want, hey, you've got it, you don't got it. You got it, you don't got it. I wanted a good flow of where they're at. And highest score, I didn't like that either. So I put decaying average, and I put this at 20%. And then you just come down here and you save it. And what that looks like is that is a part of a rubric that you can now go into an assignment, and you could pull any number of assignments can fall into this, and I'll show you that part of it. Let me get a project. So this should have quite a bit. So in this right here, a student can look at this and they can say, okay, before I even attempt it, this is what he's grading me on. And then this is what he's grading me on. This is what he's grading me on. This is what he's grading me on. And so before my students know that before they even attempt anything, they got to know what I'm grading them on. And so they need to know what matters to me. And so they have this in this form right here. And so what I do is, at the end result, when I go to grade this, I just hit speed grader right here, and I can put in the number of points that I want, and then I can come out
You
here.
hit view rubric, do they hit that too, or?
Yeah,
that's
they
just
can,
for
they
you?
can view the rubric, and then I can come in here and I can fill everything out,
Oh.
everyone, and it's done. Or I can leave them comments right here.
And then if you hit save, it'll score that up?
Yeah, and then that's where it reports to that learning mastery. This is how it reports directly to it, and it's really no, I got a grade anyway.
Right.
And I gotta put it in there anyway, but, I mean, I graded, once I graded everything, I had to record it. So, I mean, this is nothing, just to click.
Oh, I
And
keep
then-
trying, okay.
And then you just hit save, and this is what the student sees. And then you can put additional comments, you can put attachments right here that the student can see. You can speak comments into it, you can put video into it, you can do a number of things right into here that the student can see and say, hey, what were you thinking about on this part of it? This is why you got low in this, whatever.
So when they go into, so let's say they're at home watching TV and they open up their computer, they log into Canvas, do they get a notification?
I don't know if it.
They go right to the grade center and then
They
they,
will get notification that they were graded.
okay, so then they go to the grade center
Mhm.
and they actually click on the number in their grade center, right?
Yep.
And then what pops up? Does
This
pop up?
should pop up when they click on their grade.
On their front
Rubrics
page?
pop up, but mastery, outcomes, mastery,
Yeah.
it's a different tab. An instructor can enable for students to see it, or just for instructor, so.
Yeah. And so I always give them access to that, and so that's really what that looks like to them, and that's how you use it and set it up. But when you come back, let me come back out of here. So say I wanted to do another rubric, you would, let me just go to assignments and create a new assignment, and that way I can show you how to create assignments. So we come here. New assignment, come in here, you would populate anything that you ever wanted in here, directions, whether it's a test. I have my stuff, if you noticed, I have it broke down to these are your tests, these are your assignments, these are your projects, and everything like that. So I can throw this assignment into any one of them right here, so I don't have to go hunting for it, it automatically
Nice.
puts it in. The points, what online it is, and a lot of you guys are already probably doing this part of it.
Right.
And then so I said, oh, okay, so, let's just put this one on paper. And so I save and publish it, and then when I want to add a rubric, here's what and I can call this, because you guys have classes that I can use this rubric for a different.
Will you back
a lot
up, where'd you get that rubric? What'd you click on?
It's down,
Hit Control Z.
It's below your assignment information.
yeah,
Yeah, so
You have
save
to-
and publish.
there you go.
Oh, I did new assignment. And
You have to save it first.
yeah, I did that one.
Sorry,
yeah.
No, you're fine.
And then,
Okay, so,
There
and
it
then it
Oh, I
says
see.
add rubric
it'll
right
be
there.
there, you'll see it every time, you probably just ignored it.
And so,
Me.
and then you can call this whatever, just call this booth right here, because this
Huge
is
time
them welding
saver.
in their booth. And then I can find outcome, and this is where it comes into searching all them outcomes. And I can say, oh yeah, this assignment does that one, import it, and then find another outcome, and oh yeah, it does a little bit of that too. And then you import it, and then you can get rid of this one, and then you hit create rubric, and now it has, this rubric is created for this assignment. And now if I was to want a different rubric, let me go to outcomes. You can manage your rubrics through here, and these are all the rubrics that I created for this class. Or if I was going to go to another assignment, I could add another assignment, And then let's just call it a new assignment on paper and save and publish. And if I wanted to find a rubric, I could go here and I can go to, oh, I know that rubric's in this class because these are the classes right here that I teach. And then I say, oh, I want to use that rubric. And it'll automatically populate that rubric. Questions so far?
Does this, if you're just giving an exam, how do you use, does this have any value?
Yep, yep. So if you go to, let's just go to quizzes. So these are the quizzes that I give in this class right here. So if I wanted to add a new quiz, I would just say quiz 1. And it's a graded quiz, I want to put it in tests, shuffle the answers, yeah, that's great. And then save and publish. I must have something I need to do.
Name,
Oh, yeah,
don't let them see their answers.
yeah. Save and publish. And so it's saved, and now you come back in here and edit it. And so when you want to get questions, I can write questions,
Mm-hmm.
I can find questions, and if I go to find questions, I can go to banks or I can go to chapters,
Right.
and then let's say, okay, that's this one, that's this test that I have loaded up in here, and I select all of these, come down in here, and I add these questions, and it's populated, and then I come in here and show rubric, add rubric, and in the rubric that I find outcome, I can say, okay, this is really chapter 38, I click here, and now
Oh,
I
wow.
import this rubric,
Whoa.
and so this rubric is now tied to this. So when I go to grade this, if I go to quizzes again, and then I go to this right here, and I go show rubric, this is the rubric that I created for this one because it shows the outcomes, and then I go to speed grader, and then view rubric, and now this is how it reports out. And you could put as many things in here as you want. Does that make sense? And then it would track, you could split this up to a bunch of different outcomes instead of just this one outcome.
So, because what I do now with grades is I put them in an Excel form, and then I put formulas in to see what the midterm grade is. I can actually do it through this.
Oh yeah, so this is the grades that this is the grade right here. And so if I look at this, the student, before they take the test, they can look right here, let me go back, sorry. They can look at what the outcomes of the test are. This will average everything. These are, so I can know how they're doing in their tests, how they're doing in their booth, how they're doing in the projects, how they're doing in the finals, extra credit, and how they're doing in attendance and Prince and P and IDs. Everything is all averaged out right there. The student can see this. They know everything. That way they can really more guide their path forward. And take more ownership of their education. And they can also, the other neat thing about this is if I go to people, let's just click here. And go to, I think, analytics. So this is everything about this student right here, how they performed on everything. They can see this. We can come down in here. They can look at everything, and it's really almost a competition thing because you have 3 students that say, "Hey, I scored the highest on the test." They don't know that. They don't know that. They know what they scored and what the highest score was. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And they almost try to better themselves and push each other that way, because they can see where they really fit into the class.
Okay. Now I gotta go do it.
They,
Yeah,
do you have anything like outcome that you already
I'm gonna
use
bring that
to
up
show
on.
them mastery?
Yeah, I showed them mastery earlier,
Oh, you did.
but yeah, so we can come back to,
you guys, would you guys like, if we did a work day where we brought our laptops, or is there a computer lab in this?
Upstairs.
Oh, we got
Upstairs.
Yeah.
Would you
yeah,
guys wanna do it where we,
That always helps me.
Me too.
where we use one of these days as a workshop?
you know, so this person right here, I can look at this person right here and I like say, okay, he's 3.93, but he is that near mastery. He's so
And he
close.
sees that too.
Yeah, he can see that too. And so it's really, I like it because it lets them take ownership of their education.
Yeah.
They know, if I looked at you and I said, hey, we're going to San Diego, you're gonna have a lot of questions, and tomorrow we're leaving, right? So this really paints that road, we're going here, and this is why we're going here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know,
Can he click on that and see the 0.7
Yep.
that he missed?
Yep, well, no, he can always come and see me why because I gave him his papers back, or he can look at some other things, but he could always come to me, or he can go to you, or if in your class of how can I do better, you know, and I always pull him in 3 times a semester. Every 4 weeks I usually try to pull him in to say, hey, this is where you're at. And you can see how many times they're on Canvas, you can see their page views, how long they've been on it. I mean, there's so much to
You
this.
guys, can I ask you all a question? What, off the top of your head, what are things your students miss consistently, semester to semester? Can you name some skill, context,
Skill.
idea, that they miss consistently? Or they don't get very well, that a terminology?
Colloidal osmotic pressure.
Okay, say it slowly.
Colloidal osmotic pressure.
Bless you.
Yeah, what is that? So what is that?
So,
He's been a nurse for 30 years. You can have him tell you that in 2 minutes.
Okay, tell, which part of the body does that talk about?
basically when we're talking about edema, it
Okay,
has to do with protein. And
okay,
if you don't have the protein, you can't keep the fluid where it's supposed to be because there's no colloidal osmotic pressure.
aha.
And that allows it to go out of the cells and into the skin, into the interstitial space. And I explain that, I detail that, I make a point that every semester when they take that test,
Yeah,
it's low.
all right, so Clay, what would you do?
I would make an outcome of this, and I would create a rubric for this, so they could see, hey, this is exactly what's required of you in this outcome. You need to know X, Y, and Z, and label that in there so they can clearly see, this is what I need to know, and take them down that road, and then perform on this assignment, and then they can see their results, right, immediately after you grade it.
So would you put in all the pieces of colloidal?
You could, or you could just put your outcomes. What are your outcomes in them knowing this? What are they gonna be able to do, whatever you want in this, your standard, your outcome, whatever that looks like to you.
Well, now what I'm thinking about is in my curriculum, I break each system down and say, at the end of this, the student will be able to describe colloidal osmotic pressure. That's how that is, but there, whatever the system is, there's 20 things or something that you
Sure.
don't know.
Sure, and you could break this down, hey, in that class, put all 20 things up there, so you can say, hey, they're getting 15, but they're not getting these 5. You would be able to understand that at a glance of this.
Under each question.
Whatever Canvas is getting there.
No, at this point, we can do that. We can attach, align outcomes with the question banks. So, but you need to put those questions in the specific bank which matches or align with the specific outcomes. And then you can randomly pick them, or you could find and pick from different pools questions that target different outcomes. Because each pool will be aligned. So yes, there's way now, but it's very shaky way. It's easier to work with rubrics, outcome rubrics now, rather than align to the banks.
Well, that's-
But we can do that. So right now I'm working, for example, with biology department to create those, align those outcomes with their like major biology exit assessment. But Canvas now is working on the next tool, which called Quizzes Next, which is new one, which works with outcomes better, because in this new program, we will be able to align outcomes directly to individual questions. So you don't have to create this pool, okay, this pool will call outcome 1, this is outcome 2, and you will put, right now you have to do all this work. So in next, Quizzes Next, you will be able, according to them, to align outcome to the individual questions without, no pools, just questions. Yes, so for example, you have outcome that targets more than one question that targets more than one outcome.
Right.
At this point, you cannot, you need to create a special pool and align those two outcomes to those pool. In next quiz generator in Canvas, you will be able to just align this outcome to this question, this outcome to this question, more than one outcome. So once student master, those outcomes, then it will target 3, instead of 1 outcome. Yeah, so if question was properly answered. The difference between using rubrics and assigning to the question pools, even today, is that question pools will create a mastery automatically based on your alignment with the question pools. When you use rubrics, even if you attach it to the quiz, you have to actually open the submission and open the rubrics and choose in which level the student is right now toward the outcomes. So quizzes, so question pool aligned with outcomes will be graded on outcomes automatically. Rubrics, you have to do, you have to choose. Okay.
So if we were upstairs in the lab and all of us were on a computer and I had one of my exams up, then we could go through this and you could show me how I would do mine? Is that correct, Glenn? Okay?
Yeah.
And the really great thing about this is there's a spot on here where you can look at, I'm trying to remember where in my mind, where you can look at curves on how every student is, and you can look at the trend of, hey, you got it here, you missed it here. On this assignment, you missed it. And I'm trying to think of where that is, but without trying to think
Do
of
you
it.
want to pull like results based on one outcome?
Yeah, just on one student. So if I looked at a student, you could say, okay, you look at this assignment and I've reported here 5 times, but now you can see every reporting, how they did on every reporting.
If you go to Gradebook and click on the name of the students, I am not sure if you're asking about this, but there's several reports.
Okay, so this
So,
one,
and then will be outcome, this one doesn't have student outcomes. It should be there, like,
Yeah, and that's what I tried to go there, but
yeah, and I don't know if maybe you didn't use outcomes in this one.
yeah, I used outcomes and everything.
You did.
So the really neat thing that I really like about this is, see this student right here has 1.8 out of 4. I can now put him with somebody who is strong in this outcome to help him teach. They can
Yeah.
start teaching each other.
How do you do
And I
that?
would have never known that until, because I can assign groups and I can just put them in groups and I can say, hey, you know, at the beginning of class, these are your groups for now, but your groups might change. And so I can look at this and say, hey, you know what, that group dynamic is working really well, but this group dynamic is not. Now I can switch you and I reserve that right in the very beginning, right? And so now they're teaching each other in these concepts.
Oh, I like that.
And I can do that after every time I've graded something, because now I have this curve of where they
And
work.
you can actually see the specifics. See, I'll have students that aren't doing very well, and I'll ask, okay, so how do you study?
Yeah.
Or who do you study with? And I find out either they're studying alone,
Yeah.
and not doing well, or they're studying with people who aren't doing very well in those areas. So then I try to gear them to study with certain people,
Yeah,
because I know that they're gonna strengthen where they're low.
yeah, so
In this, you can actually do that.
you can, and you can see exactly the concept that they're low in.
Right.
So now you could move groups around and change groups after everything's graded, it's done, because it's instantaneous. And for you to be able to do this, you would have to rip apart your whole test and say, okay, question 1, how did you do? How did you do? How did you do? And then question 2, how did you know what I mean? This does it already.
So what about skills? Let's say my students are learning to put their gloves on.
Okay,
And so I show them how to do that. Next week I come back and I say, show me how to put your gloves on. And you get your gloves on and you contaminate, open the package, you know, around
Yeah.
the table. So
Okay.
then, well, they can't sit on that score. Everybody has to be able to do it.
sure.
So we come back next week and you already have mastered this trick. Well, you did last week. Let's see if you can do it 2 weeks in a row. Do I use the same rubric?
Uh-huh.
And now I can just change their score.
Yeah.
It'll do it automatically, because
It'll be a new assignment.
you'll just create another assignment. Assignment 1, put on your gloves. Assignment 2, put on your gloves 2.
Twice.
And then 3, and then it'll, like I said, the course goes from here to here. Now you can say, hey, 20% of every time I report to this, or if it's really important, maybe 50% or 60%. And now they will, on top of the world, now they're not doing good. Top of the world, now they're not doing good.
So every time I say, today you gotta put your gloves on, then I have to create another mastery.
Another assignment.
Assignment.
Yeah, it's just an assignment. And you would want to track them anyway. You would somehow, if it is that, it's really important for that, so you would already have this assignment built.
Right, I have it on a paper.
Yeah, and now you would just say, okay, you could look at them and say, okay, you got it, you got it, you got it, and then it's just a matter of when I come in here and
Enter the grades manually.
enter the grades, I go to speed grader, and if there was 10 things about putting on your gloves, you would look at your rubric and you would say, okay, these are the 10 things about putting on your gloves. You did this good, this bad, this good, this bad, this good, this bad. Click, and then it's all saved to each respective outcome. And then you do it again, and you, oh, this bad, this good, this bad, this good, and then it automatically reports, like mine would say, that mastery is worth 20% again. So you have this curve of how they're doing it.
So let's say the first time I tell you to put on your gloves, that's worth 20%. Next time it's worth 20%. Next time it's worth 20%. But I only want truly to grade them. Can I override their, because they're learning how to do this, nobody can do it, and then all of a sudden they all can. So like this one's worth 20% unless you do better the next time. This one disappears.
Yep.
Now you're here.
Yeah, because you could.
As soon as you master it, these two disappear. Now you've mastered it.
Yeah, because that would be on.
I mean, in the grade book.
Yeah.
You probably
'Cause you-
want to
'cause you-
give the same assignment the second time. It's like pre-test, post-test, if you want to monitor their
Right.
growth. So you will give them maybe like at the beginning of the semester and maybe on the, like in the middle, the same test, which you will assess them on the same outcomes.
So-
But they will probably perform much better in the middle of the semester. And then in mastery, what it does, you can actually monitor their growth. So if you assess them on the same outcomes through the semester, there's some calculation method, which is called decaying.
Decaying?
Is that your
Sorry.
Yeah.
So it takes like weighted average, like the last, of course, the last will lose 65% of the all. And first, at the beginning of the semester, the percentage of mastery will be only like, the rest will be like 35%. So the last assignment will weigh more to show the mastery on this certain outcomes.
And the cool thing about this is not a grade. So
This is not their
don't think of this as a grade.
No.
Think of this as understanding the concept. Do you
Right.
get what's coming,
Right.
what I'm talking about,
Then where does this show up in the grade book?
under the mastery? So,
But it's not like, you got 10 points for doing
No.
this.
You can
You
use
can-
Either way,
use it,
You
but
send
can
it by
use
the
them
way.
as a grade.
No.
I don't use it that way, because alls I care about is, do you understand this concept?
Yeah.
Your grade is your grade, I gave you the grade, I'm gonna give you this grade, but I wanna know through the rubrics how you understand this concept, and I wanna track it every time.
Oh, that's much better for me. Because a lot of the skills they have to do are pass-fail.
Yeah,
Right.
and
You got
that's,
them on, or you didn't get them
there
on.
you go, and so you can look at their grades, and their grades are, you know, I mean, you come in here and you're looking at it, and then you come in here at their mastery, this has nothing to do with their grades.
Okay.
It does, but it doesn't report that way. So what I do is if I've got the rubric right here and I say, okay, I give you, as I'm grading it, I say, each one of them, say this one's worth 25%, 25 points, this one's worth 30 points, this is worth 50 points, however that works out. And I'm looking at this and I say, okay, well, I penciled you in for a 42. So now what I do is I take 42 divided by 50, that's what you get on your mastery. Because 5 to me is 100, or is that 90 percentile, 4 is that 80 percentile, and that's what I click right there. So that it's tied, but it's not tied to their overall grade.
But it can be. I mean,
You can.
So I go in and I look at their mastery overall for 1 million tasks they have to pull off this
Right.
fall semester.
Yes.
And then at some point, it gives me some kind of a score.
Mhm.
And I say, you got 400 points for
Mhm.
this?
Yes.
And then, especially for our one class, it causes you to pass. Or you got 100 points because you don't pay attention, and that causes you to fail.
Yes.
Like, it'll work that way in the
Yep.
grade book if I did that.
Yep.
Actually, you can use differently grading rubrics
Mhm.
and outcome rubrics. So sometimes for big tests, program tests,
Mhm.
so they do that because they're interested in
What did you call them, grading rubrics and outcome rubrics?
so, okay, so we have a rubrics. In those
Yes.
rubrics, we could use grading criteria,
Yeah.
just
okay.
regular criteria in rubrics. But we also could find outcomes and add to those rubrics. So we
That was
can
my
mix
question.
them and choose what we want to use for grading. You could choose that not use for grading outcomes, but assign only points on criteria. Or you could use in outcomes and criteria for grading, but it will not prevent you from generating mastery gradebook and see progression on outcomes. Or you could use two rubrics. One just for grading to show students, and one is outcomes. And you use for grading only first one, and don't use for grading outcomes. But you click there
Yeah.
to generate.
So this is a spot right here where you would define what you really want. It says, if you click this, I'll write free-form comments when assessing students. Remove points from rubric. Don't post outcomes as a result to the grade mastery. Use this rubric for assignment grading or hide scores from assessment. Right here, if you click this one, it is going to report to the grade book as well.
Okay,
And I don't click that one because I don't want it, it gets, if you have a lot of outcomes, it gets really messy really fast.
yeah,
Because once you build this rubric and you start grading on it, you can't change this rubric. You have to build another rubric. You can't change this one because it'll mess up all of your outcomes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, outcomes, once they are assessed already, like student were assessed on this outcome, we cannot delete it, we cannot edit it, even on admin level, because they prevent from screwing this whole picture.
Yeah, because you want the big
And some
picture.
outcomes, yes, so they work like to assess programs, and some of them on the college level, so we don't want to mess up, and so they prevent us from changing that. So that's why, and rubrics is different, and rubrics, you have, on the course level, you need to, so what we have in the past, you can find the rubrics, you can change scoring when you apply to. So, but it will not change your main rubrics in Rubrics Manager. So you will have like, here one rubric, and I had instructor who called and said, I changed this rubric 3 times, and it's still like old one. And because whatever you find from Rubric Manager and attached to the specific assignment, those rubrics is like, and if you change, it's like apply only to this assignment. It's like a copy of the rubric, the main. So you're not changing actually rubrics, that next time you will attach, and it comes old rubric from the Rubric Manager. So, but you can change rubrics while you are attaching to the certain, and that was designed intentionally, because sometimes you wanna different scoring in rubrics for this assignment and maybe different scoring for another assignment. So you don't wanna mess up your main rubric.
So, in nursing, we have historically taught systems. You memorize the system and what happens. And that's how your PowerPoints and your lecture goes. Now we start moving towards, I want you to understand the concept. We're into concepts now. They still take a test that has to do a lot with rote memory and that piece. Our questions do get harder as they get more analytical, where you have to put pieces together. So in what you're talking about here, Clay, I have a score that's gonna tell them what they got on their test, but I could have this other thing that says, here's, in the concept, here's the part that you're missing in the concept.
That's it to a T. And that's what we care about, is what don't you understand so I can help you here, right?
Yeah.
And it's once it's built, it's done. All you have to do is click on here, okay, you got this, and you have to grade anyway. Once it's built, there's no extra things. And now you can say, hey, Billy, you don't understand the left ventricle, if you wanted to get that granular. How granular you get is up to you. You can put on this outcome tabs, you write whatever you want. You can build it however you want. This is your world, or if you co-teach with somebody else, you collaborate and you build this out and say, this is what it looks like, this is what we care about, and this is how we're gonna access you. And now we know that you don't know the difference between veins and venials, essentially, if you want to get that specific. You know what I mean?
It takes a while to set it up, and you definitely want to outline what you want before you get started, because you'll head down a rabbit hole and find out that you want to go a whole nother way, and you have to back all the way out of the rabbit hole so that you can go that other way. So having it in place with what you want on paper or electronically is even better, then you can dump it into Canvas a lot cleaner.
And so what, as Robin said that, when I first started this is my third year doing it, second or third year doing this. I went to Isabella and I said, how does this work? And I
We
said,
learned together, because
And-
no one was using, and not only in our college, there was only like couple colleges who started using that in Canvas. And Clay was brave enough just to start it here, and he's progressed so far
But-
now.
and so I started down this road, how does this work? And I don't know where things are reporting, so I built it. And I got all these weird numbers, and so I was like, okay, well, that ain't how that works. And I got really granular with things and everything, and then I was pulling things in, and it didn't work that way, so I tried it again. But I rebuilt 2 6-credit courses in a day apiece from
Oh, that's
scratch.
pretty fast.
Yeah.
Just because I understand how things work now. I know where they report, I know I can copy, I can paste, and it's so much easier. So the first time you do this, yeah, it's gonna be a little bumpy, it's like anything. But once you understand where things report and how it goes quick.
So I like your description about how an in-class activity could apply here. It's a great way to give feedback to students on activities that might not typically get that kind of feedback, so I like that. What I'm wondering is, I have never once in however many years I've been teaching taught the same class. So I mean, literally, I joke about it, but it's, I go in on day one and it's, let's see what happens, and let's see who we've got, and like, we don't have to put the gloves on. If I walk in and the kids don't have hands, when I put the gloves on, we're doing something different, right? So I'm essentially building my courses as I go every single time. In terms of delivery, is there a way that this applies to that, or is it just gonna be an overwhelming amount of upfront on-the-fly work during the semester every time?
But you should have core standards, common things.
They're really broad. I have really big, broad outcomes that we
Okay,
get at. But the way we get at them is as different as you could possibly imagine from semester to semester.
And that's fine, but you could say, okay, you teach percussion, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so, how you could, I don't know what an outcome was, but you could label this outcome and you could take beating on a drum and say, these are your outcomes, and then assess them every time, during assignments, give them
Build
some.
outcomes well through the semester. You don't have to put all your outcomes right there, if it's on course level.
Mm-hmm.
If it's on program level, because you share it across the
Right.
courses, this should be built by admin
Right.
or whoever has rights to this
But
level.
I can build and adjust these rubrics
Oh, yeah.
on the fly.
Yeah, because they're yours.
But it sounds like that is, like the way you're describing it, it sounds like this is a tremendous amount of upfront work. And then like it's the way I'm hearing you explain it is, this is a ton of work up front and it's gonna be great for you once you have it set up. And what I'm asking is if the setup changes every time, if the upfront work never ends, is that always gonna be onerous or?
I would use this loosely then. That way a student knows, hey, I'm here, and where can I go from here? Does that make sense? I'm sure you're giving them great feedback, but this is a, hey, you're here, you're here, you're here, you're here. So I would use it very loosely in your application. But I would at least try to use it, and you could start small. You could say, hey, you know what, everybody does this, and so we're gonna build these few things and see how they like it, how you like it, and then maybe the next semester you add 5 more, and hey, yeah, it works, oh, that didn't work. I would start small in that case.
Maybe pick one out.
Yeah.
Or Scott, you could, for example, I'm teaching the first 2 weeks, and this is my assessment. I will just build only outcomes for this assessment and align them, like. And next 2 weeks, maybe I'm preparing for next assessment, I could, build more. So it's not, it will reduce the work, amount of work.
But it's not
Upfront.
even, I mean, it's never even that far in advance. It's like course, session to session. Like I had a plan written out for next week that I scrapped after Thursday.
Right,
I'm writing a new plan for Tuesday right now.
right. This is a great question.
Yeah, I would start small. I would just,
Couple of
you know, one or two, and hey, let your students know, hey, this is what we're trying, this is what you're doing, and then get their feedback of it. Like I said, my students really, really like it because they know exactly where they stand. And they know where, not only where they stand, but where other students stand, so they're pushing them along, you know, versus, I don't even know, I know where I'm at, but where's the rest of the class at?
So what about this? This is maybe my idea, and I don't know if this is too broad or not. Maybe instead of the thing I did in class, instead of putting on the gloves, maybe the activity is just the class, and I come up with 4 or 5 broad things in general that I'm gonna look at, right? Are you breathing? It's literally one of them, I'm not kidding.
Did you show up on time?
No, are you breathing? Can you keep time?
Right.
Are you, you know?
Right.
Did you
Sounds like
participate?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Left home base,
And
shoulder.
so then like, I have these big broad things and it's just like class 1, you know, this is where you fell on all those things, class 2, this is where you, so they
That's a
can
great
track
idea.
their own progress from class to class instead of assignment to assignment.
That's a great idea.
So some are procedural, right? Like some are
Yeah.
procedural and some are content specific. So, for example, is an outcome of yours that is a program outcome that they see themselves as a musician, or is that a course outcome?
That's, I mean,
Do they,
No.
could it be this? Well, give me one of your outcomes, your broad ones.
play music in groups.
Ah, there we go, okay.
So that demands that they show up to the group.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then you break it down.
Yeah.
So I have, and when we do our workshop, so I have a real generic one, because after Clay did this presentation last year, I went, so I just have one done. And I'm still trying to figure out was it an outcome or a rubric? Where did I build it? But it was on discussion boards online. So, you know, for the full points, you did these things. For partial points, you forgot, you know, these elements of it, and did you contribute in this way? So now when I go to graded, now I'm stuck. But I'm seeing from your presentation, I could actually, well, I think I tried. I went into the speed grader, and then I hit show rubric, and then I started putting the points there, but then it didn't populate in. That's because I didn't check that box,
Yeah,
huh?
you probably didn't link it. Yeah.
Got it.
You
So
know,
were they
and
seeing that
This,
then?
this is, you what?
Were they seeing it then? So I went
Uh-huh.
in and I'm like, okay, you didn't, whatever, reference the textbook. I'm sorry, I'm kind of lame like that, but you know, you didn't reference the textbook, so you didn't get full points.
Sure.
And then I go in and I'm like, oh, it didn't do it. So then I manually put in, whatever, 7 out of 10 points. Now, are they seeing that I used the rubric? Because I went into the rubric and I clicked on,
I'd have to see how you.
yeah, so when we do our workshop, I'll show you, but.
You know, and this is one of the things that they really like. So this northeast layout right here, one,
Oh, yeah.
it was worth 100 points, the low was 22, the median was 88. So they can see, this is one student that he can look at it and he can say, okay, this is the low, this is where I'm at. And this is where they get that competition thing going. And because if I get a 70 on it, how do I know everybody, I'm not the highest grade in the
Yeah,
class?
well, it's always nice to know, I'm not the only one who didn't understand,
Yeah,
or,
and the
wow, I
other-
can help others.
The most amazing thing that I found on this whole thing, if I come in here and I go to,
And Robin, you'll black out, there was a name.
Yeah, all of the names will be erased.
if I go to grades, okay, and now I'm in learning mastery, and I'm looking at this and all this is red, that's my fault.
Yeah.
I didn't explain this well.
Right, yeah.
How, without them not paying attention, or not paying attention, but without them giving me the feedback of, because I'm too scared to raise my hand, hey, coach, I don't understand, I can look out here and say, nobody understands this. How can I explain it in a different way? And that's another beauty of this program, because I can see their holes, and I can see my holes as an instructor. And how do I explain this? Come to them, hey, this concept, everybody's a little shaky on, and it's not an assignment, it's a concept. You know what I mean? And that's the beauty of it, because that's what we care about. They know the concepts.
So what's going on with those three? They're almost there. Now, how do you go in and see?
This 3.93?
Yeah, that one and the other student, those three students right there, are they all missing the same thing? Or how do you further break it down now?
I can go into their individual, and that's the one where I don't remember, so I can go back to their history and say, okay, this has been reported to 5 times, and you were good here, you were good here, you were good here, you weren't good here.
Oh, okay.
And so I can see this assignment, and I can go back to this assignment, and I can look at them, and I can bring them into my office, and I say, hey, Billy, you don't understand this, how can I help you?
Where do you see that through?
Do you know where because it shows you the curve of every reporting.
Try to export, we will see what we will export. So, not here, no, go out. When I pull, I could see outcome report on each student. I don't know why it doesn't show here.
Right here on export?
So I will go back to my room and see.
Export report?
Yeah.
Do export report. And we
So
will
this
see.
this usually just gives you an Excel
Yeah, so-
form,
oh,
and
it's
it's
Excel.
not,
So this is like
it's just raw
detail.
data.
Okay, that won't
on
tell you?
each-
Okay.
Yeah.
So now, try to, are you talking about quiz statistic or are you talking about
No.
outcomes? So go to outcomes, like go to the course menu, go to outcomes, like outcomes on the
It's
left.
right here. So right here,
Well, this is.
Oh,
this
right
is
there.
just rubrics.
okay,
Yes,
so this, let me click on the other one real quick. So this is, where was it?
Oh, back to the student's name and then grades or analytics over there on the right you hit.
Grades.
Grades.
Okay, so now so you can see this right here.
Yeah.
So this is their low, this is their high, this is their median,
Yeah, that's statistics.
and then you can go to here.
And that shows where they fell down, right there.
Yeah.
GTAW booth. So
Yeah.
then you would do that for, can you now pull that for all the 3 students at once?
Yes, at
So-
once, I would have to have 3 screens to
Oh,
put
okay,
up.
so you just would go through each student and jot down on a piece of paper?
Yeah,
and then you
when
can
they
see
came
if
into
it's
my
the same
office,
thing or-
and then I would pull that up, but there's also another,
Can you click on outcomes menu link, not here, but
On
on
the
the
left?
left side, below syllabus?
right here,
Yeah,
okay?
Okay, and if you click on one outcome, no, can you just scroll down, not on outcomes, no, there's nothing. So click on outcome title,
Right here,
yeah,
okay?
and click on outcome title again, no, on the left side, right side, sorry, feed up both.
Oh,
Okay, the big blue.
this
So
tells you
click
how
here,
many times
yeah,
I've linked
click.
it. So this is everything that's
will
linked.
show another report in which items you use this outcome.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And, but,
I, yeah.
so what?
Yeah, so this is the artifacts of
And
this
it's
and how they
artifacts
did.
by student. Yeah, this is your students.
Yeah, this is
Oh.
by student.
Now, what does that tell you? I don't have my glasses on there.
And
What is
all
that page
outcomes
doing?
result for the students are here.
Yeah, there was a spot that
You clicked on and found something, okay.
yeah, so anyway, there's a concept in here that says each assignment they did it. This is what they got, this is what they got, this is what they got, and it's a graph of every assignment. So I can go back to that one assignment and say, this is where you're falling down.
Okay.
That one assignment, then I could re-explain that assignment
Yeah,
to that student.
yeah. Thanks, Clay. Oh, go ahead, John.
When, towards the end of their curriculum, end of the program, we do these summative tests through HESI. and they find out how well they're doing in mental health. So, and when they do those tests, they break them down into patient care, assessment, which are concepts. And so if I can do that during the course, then in my accreditation, I could say, we saw that they weren't doing well here, and this is what we did for a remediation in order to try to raise that standard that we're
Exactly.
having.
That's exactly how you use this.
That's where I wanna get. Yeah.
And that way they're mastering concepts. And you can understand where they don't, what part of that concept don't you get?
And I think what everyone was trying to get to, if I have, like, let's say I have 30 students and I have 10 of them that all miss that same thing, that clues me and I get 10 people, because of their learning style, that's how I look at it, did not understand the way I explained that. So I need to find another way to explain it, so those 10 now understand that concept.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and you can even break it down. I have two main categories in my lab. I have booth, and then I have project. So I have the same standards. There's nothing different about the standards, but I've created a booth and a project, so I can now get a little more granular and say, hey, you're not doing good in the booth, but you're doing good in the projects on this standard. So now I have just a little bit more granularity, and you can do the same thing in a lab classroom setting. Same standard, there's nothing different here, but now you're doing great in the classroom, but here's where you're falling down in the lab. Does that make sense? And that's what I like about it, because now I can pinpoint exactly where they're falling down, and then pick them up before the end of this semester. And now I have a student that says, instead of saying, you know, you got a 60%, where do I got a 60%?
Right.
Well, and when they get done with the program and they're getting ready to take that NCLEX, which is the final thing that says they're gonna be a nurse for the licensure, if I have seen a pattern, this is the concept throughout the course and your summative exams that you have difficulty with, then I can recommend, I need you to get this book and review it, because that's the spot that you're weak in. So when you take the NCLEX,
Or when you're giving them your recommendation about who to study with, not only can you see who's weak in concept A, you can see who's strong in it and say, you know, you ought to go with.
That's what you
Yes.
do groups with.
Yeah, and you can change their groups, and then that way they're learning from each other, and they learn from each other very well. You know, and then that really takes a lot of the teaching back off of you when you can use this in a project, and now you're just facilitating and said, oh well, don't do that, just change it to here, and then walk to the next one, and now you're using the classroom to teach each other.
Yeah.
which is where we're headed maybe in our program, not till next fall. One day they'll be at home, they'll do all the material, then they're gonna come in the second day for a lecture, and it's gonna be group stuff. We'll be doing case studies, we'll be doing, and that's where the concept thing again comes into, do you understand the concept?
That's what we were talking about last week in here, where that guy said, you know, he was doing really, really well with all his lectures, he got great evals, everybody was happy, but then when it came to find out, they didn't really know it. They could regurgitate stuff, but they could not I mean, they could do tests and things, but they couldn't explain this colloidal
Osmotic
edema.
pressure.
Yeah, protein, I got that, colloidal something, osmotic pressure, osmosis. Anyway, they couldn't really apply, which is what we're all about here. And so one of the things that, who was telling me? Oh, Ellen, I said, so she told her students, you know, if you guys go and do some of that background reading, look for these things, you know, just read these pages from the chapter, skip this part, blah, blah, blah. If you come, then our discussions can get more meaningful, deeper, you know, we can really dig into some stuff and really comprehend. And in that way, you can bring in chicken and talk about protein and maybe some cute, pressure socks, and, you know, talking about, I mean, you have the visual then, and you have that luxury of doing what Clay does, because, you know, he's got all the tools there.
So I think we should do this again.
Okay,